Happy Thursday, everybody. It's October 10th, and we're going to be diving deep into some PC hardware.
Oh, yeah. Sounds good.
Are you ready to geek out with me a little bit?
Always ready to geek out. Let's do it.
All right, so we are looking at some articles today from TechSpace,
Okay.
which is a Taiwanese tech news site
Right.
that has some really in-depth coverage of all the latest hardware.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be focusing on AMD, Intel, and ADATA today,
Okay.
which gives us a pretty good overview of what's happening with CPUs, motherboards, and memory.
For sure. Those are some of the big players out there right now.
Yeah, they are the big dogs.
Yeah. And it's interesting to see what they're doing because there's always this back and forth, right? Like one company will come out with something amazing and then the other one has to try to top it.
It's like a constant game of one-upmanship.
Exactly.
And so our mission today is to kind of cut through all the noise and figure out,
Yeah.
what do these advancements really mean?
Right. Because not everybody's an engineer.
Exactly.
Like we are.
Not everybody needs to be.
Right. But everybody uses this technology, so it's good to know what you're buying.
Right. And what's the point of all this new stuff?
Yeah, exactly. Like, is it actually going to make a difference in your day-to-day life?
Exactly. So let's jump right into it with CPUs.
Okay.
AMD is making some pretty big waves with their new EP1 Turin processors.
Oh, yeah. I've heard about these. They're really impressive.
So they're calling their top-of-the-line chip the EP1 9965.
Okay.
And it's packing 192 cores.
192. That's insane.
That's a lot of cores.
That's a whole lot of processing power.
It's a lot of processing power, and they're claiming up to 4 times faster performance than Intel Xeon chips.
Wow. Okay, so they're really going after the server market with this one.
Yeah, this is definitely aimed at data centers and high-performance computing.
Right, because when you're talking about servers and data centers, speed is everything.
Absolutely. Every millisecond counts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's where AMD is really trying to set themselves apart with these new chips.
Yeah, they're not just throwing more cores at the problem either. They're also claiming a 37% jump in IPC.
Now, that's impressive. Tell me more about that.
Okay, so IPC stands for instructions per cycle.
Okay.
And it's basically a measure of how many operations a CPU core can perform in a single clock cycle.
So a higher IPC means each core is working more efficiently.
Exactly. It's like having a worker who can get more done in the same amount of time.
Right, which ultimately leads to faster performance overall.
Exactly. And AMD's claiming this 37% jump in IPC is a pretty big deal.
Oh, yeah, that's huge. It means these new chips are not only more powerful, but they're also more efficient.
And they're also claiming that these new processors are more power efficient.
Which is great for data centers because they consume a lot of energy.
So less power consumption means lower operating costs, which is a big deal for businesses.
Absolutely. And it could even trickle down to consumers eventually in terms of lower prices.
Let's not get too excited about that just yet.
Right. We'll have to wait and see how it all plays out.
Okay, so AMD's making a big move. What's Intel doing?
Well, they're not just sitting back and watching, that's for sure. They've got their own new processors out. The Core Ultra 200S series, codenamed Arrow Lake.
Oh, okay, Arrow Lake.
Yeah, they're switching to a new socket with this generation, though, LGA 1851.
So anyone who wants to upgrade is going to need a new motherboard.
That's right, a new motherboard and probably new DDR5 RAM, too.
Yeah, we'll get to the memory stuff in a bit.
Okay, sounds good.
But Intel's top-of-the-line chip for Arrow Lake is the Core i9 285K.
Right, and how does that stack up against AMD's top offering?
Well, it's a tight race.
Okay, so it sounds like Intel's still got some fight in it.
Oh, yeah, they're not going down without a fight. But Intel has admitted that they're a little behind AMD when it comes to gaming performance.
Interesting. And what do they attribute that to?
They're saying it's because of AMD's 3D V-Cache technology.
Ah, yes, 3D V-Cache. That's been a game changer for AMD.
It has. So can you explain what 3D V-Cache is?
Sure. 3D V-Cache is basically like adding a super fast memory layer directly on top of the CPU. So it's like giving the CPU its own little private stash of data that it can access really quickly.
Okay, so it's like having a mini fridge right next to your gaming chair so you don't have to go all the way to the kitchen for a drink.
Exactly. It eliminates those long trips to the main memory, which can slow things down.
That's actually a really good analogy.
Thanks. I thought so.
So 3D V-Cache is helping AMD get that extra edge in gaming performance.
It definitely seems to be giving them an advantage at the moment.
So how does Intel plan to counter that?
Well, they're focusing on efficiency. They claim that their new chips can achieve comparable performance to AMD's while using less power.
Okay, so it's like a fuel efficiency battle.
Kind of like that, yeah. Intel's chips are like the hybrid car of CPUs. They might not have the raw horsepower of a sports car, but they can go just as fast while sipping on fuel.
And using less power means less heat, which is always a good thing.
Absolutely. Especially for gamers who are always pushing their systems to the limit.
So it's a classic trade-off, raw power versus efficiency.
Exactly. And the best option really depends on your individual needs and priorities.
All right, so we've got AMD pushing the boundaries of performance and Intel focusing on efficiency.
It's a very exciting time to be following the CPU market, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And this battle is only going to heat up in the coming months.
I can't wait to see what they come up with next.
It's going to be fun to watch it all unfold. But CPUs are only part of the story, right?
Right. We got to talk about motherboards, too.
Motherboards, they're like the unsung heroes of the PC world.
Totally. They're the foundation that everything else builds on.
Exactly. And ASUS has just announced their new ROG Maximus Z890 series.
Ooh, the RG Maximus line. Those are some seriously high-end motherboards.
They are definitely geared towards enthusiasts and gamers.
For sure.
Yeah.
But you know what I think is really cool?
Look at it.
Even at the high end, we're seeing more and more focus on user-friendliness.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. It's like they're trying to make PC building less intimidating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like take the ROG Maximus Z890 Hero, for example. It's got this feature called Q Release for SSDs and GPUs.
Q release? What is that?
It basically makes it super easy to install and remove those components.
Oh, that's nice. No more struggling with those tiny little screws.
Exactly. And they've also pre-mounted the I/O shield.
Which is a lifesaver.
Right. That used to be the worst part of building a PC.
Totally fiddling with that thing was always a nightmare.
So it's great to see these quality of life improvements even on high-end motherboards.
Absolutely. And the Z890 Hero also has a ton of M2 slots for NVMe drives.
Oh yeah, NVMe drives are becoming the standard these days.
They're so much faster than traditional SATA SSDs.
Like night and day, especially for things like loading games and transferring large files.
For sure. And speaking of speed, these new motherboards also have to support PCIe 5.0.
Ah, yes, PCIe 5.0, the latest and greatest.
So remind me again what's so special about PCIe 5.0.
Sure, PCIe stands for Peripheral Component Interconnect Express. And it's basically the highway that data travels on between your CPU and your other components like your graphics card and your storage drives.
Okay.
And PCIe 5.0 doubles the bandwidth of PCIe 4.0.
So it's like widening the highway from 2 lanes to 4 lanes.
Exactly. More lanes mean more data can travel at the same time, which means faster speeds.
Got it. So we've got these blazing fast CPUs motherboards that are packed with features, and now PCIe 5.0 to connect everything together.
It's a recipe for some seriously impressive performance.
It really is. But we can't forget about the memory.
Ah, yes. Memory. The unsung hero of PC performance.
Because what good is all that processing power if you can't feed it data fast enough?
Exactly. And that's where ADATA comes in with their new DDR5 CUDIMM modules.
ADATA, they're a big name in memory, right?
Oh yeah, they've been around for a while. And these new CUDIMM modules are pretty interesting.
CDM. That's a new one on me.
It stands for capacitorless unbuffered DIMM.
Catchy, but what does that actually mean?
So basically, it's a different way of designing memory modules that eliminates certain components, specifically the capacitors.
Okay. And why is that a good thing?
Well, it allows for faster speeds and potentially better overclocking.
So it's all about squeezing out that extra bit of performance.
Exactly. And these new ADATA modules are claiming speeds up to 9,200 MTs.
9,200, that's insane.
It is incredibly fast. Though those speeds are really only going to be beneficial for very specific use cases.
Like what? Give me an example.
Sure. Think hardcore gaming, professional video editing, or anything else that involves processing massive amounts of data very quickly.
So for the average user like me,
Right.
I probably don't need to rush out and buy those 9,200 MTs memory modules.
Probably not. Unless you're planning on doing some serious video editing or something like that.
Yeah, I think I'll stick to my spreadsheets for now.
Spreadsheets and emails. The bread and butter of the everyday user.
Exactly. But you know, it's still cool to see how fast this technology is moving.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's mind-blowing. And it just goes to show that there's always something new and exciting happening in the world of PC hardware.
There really is. So maybe let's try to wrap things up here.
Okay, sounds good.
We've covered a lot of ground today. We talked about AMD's new EPYC turn processors, which are aiming for the server market with those impressive core counts and that big IPC jump.
Definitely a power move from AMD.
And then we have Intel fighting back with their Core Ultra 200S processors.
Arrow Lake.
Arrow Lake, right. They're focusing on efficiency and that new LGA 1851 socket.
Which means new motherboards for anyone who wants to upgrade.
Exactly. And of course, we can't forget about ASUS and their new ROG Maximus Z890 motherboards.
Those Q release buttons sound pretty sweet.
They do. Anything that makes PC building easier is a win in my book.
Agreed. And then we finished up with ADATA and their super fast DDR5 CUDIMM memory modules.
It's amazing how fast memory is getting these days.
It really is like the blink of an eye.
So what's the takeaway here for our listeners?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that it's a fantastic time to be a PC enthusiast.
Agreed. There's so much innovation happening right now. Both AMD and Intel are pushing each other to be better.
And that competition ultimately benefits us, the consumers.
Exactly. We get faster, more powerful, and more efficient computers.
And don't forget, more user-friendly, too.
Right, with features like those Q release buttons and pre-mounted I/O shields.
It's like they finally listened to our complaints.
Yeah, it seems like they're finally starting to.
But I think it's also important to remember that you don't need to buy the latest and greatest hardware to have a great computing experience.
So true. Don't get caught up in the hype cycle.
Exactly. Figure out what your needs are, what you actually use your computer for.
And what your budget is.
Yes.
Yes.
Because you can build a fantastic PC these days without breaking the bank.
Absolutely. All right, well said. Thanks for joining me for this deep dive into the world of PC hardware.
Anytime. It's always fun to geek out with you.
And thanks to all of you for listening. We'll catch you next time.